if you really can put the right resources behind Filipino creators, you can get that same wave that the Korean culture had, right? Where Filipino musicians can be some of the biggest musicians in the world. Filipino film and TV and stories can be some of the biggest stories in the world. I think the thing that we need to and you know we are and we need to have a firm footing on and take a strong stance on is that like the core of Kumu and the most defensible part and differentiated part of Kumu is our local creator base and our local community base. First and foremost, and then everything else is secondary, right? Like the features that Kumu has, like there are lots of apps that have it. There are lots of bigger companies that can do the tech side better than Kumu can. And so where we can really win is if we're the best partner to Filipino creators and our Filipino community base, and that we give them value that they're excited about and they feel makes a meaningful difference that they can't get anywhere else. So for our creators, that means just making more and more of these opportunities for them to kind of get their break, be on TV, be in a magazine cover, be in the content and IP that we're developing, and are investing in, like putting our creators at the forefront of that, so that it's helping build their careers and their audience. For our community, it's just things that make them feel special, right? And that they feel like they're a part of this thing in a way that they're not like a part of a Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. And that's everything from just how you reward them in app to we have like actually our community base is like this fully volunteer almost like political system. We have senators, community senators who are empowered to make decisions and create activities and events for their district in the community. We create like special experiences and special merchandise and just like those intangible things that just make them feel like they're special and cared for, right? So that's I think that's, and then what that translates to in the long term is if you can be very secure in our relationship with the Filipino creator ecosystem and be the best investor and partner in Filipino creators, then you can eventually leverage that to build a business in other parts of the media and entertainment sector, leveraging that creator base. Like you can build an events business, you can build a business, you can leverage those creators to power like the next wave of Filipino film and TV and other emerging mediums. Music, obviously. And then there's this, for us, there's this really exciting optionality of if you're able to do that, and if you're able to be the best partner for Filipino creators, and there's also a global the potential for a global breakthrough, where the Philippines is this place where you have like a very creative population, very musically inclined, very creatively inclined, and that also happens to speak English, and it's probably, I think, one of if not the biggest English speaking population outside of the United States and Europe. And so the things that get big here can cross over to markets outside the Philippines. And so there's a sense too that, in a way, where the Philippines is right now is kind of where Korean culture was in 2013, 2014, where you had like people in the US knew about Korean food and they had a Korean friend, and maybe you knew a couple of Korean movies, and then you had like every now and then something like a Gangnam Style would possibly these one-off Korean culture products that would get international attention, but it wasn't a thing yet, right? Like K-dramas weren't like a thing in the way they are now. K-pop wasn't a thing the way they are now. This was before BTS and Blackpink really broke through. So it feels like that right now. Like people know about, or people globally like know about the Philippines. A lot of people have a Filipino friend. They know about Filipino food now. They know a couple of like specific cultural things that are coming out of the Philippines. But there's this potential that if you really can put the right resources behind Filipino creators, you can get that same wave that the Korean culture had, right? Where Filipino musicians can be some of the biggest musicians in the world. Filipino film and TV and stories can be some of the biggest stories in the world. So that's our kind of long-term vision, is to be a driver of that. I think the biggest thing for me is finding the balance of when to be like listening and learning, but also when to know when you have insight that's specific to this thing that you're working on, that basically like when to be consensus and non-consensus, right? And for us, I think what we've learned is we benefit a lot from bringing people in from the outside, bringing in external investors and advisors, and that's always been a big part of our culture. But at the same time, what we're working on is a pretty unique thing, and that means in some cases, like, you just have to trust your intuition on things that are not what everyone else is saying. And specifically, like Kumu, live streaming app, at the scale that we are in the Philippines, it's nothing like a TikTok, Instagram, etc. Like, we're just a completely different scale of business, and so most of the things that you see those platforms do don't apply to Kumu. And then also, if you look at how many companies are, let's say 8-figure US revenue range in the media and entertainment space, there's probably only, and that, if you remove the ones that are coming out of China, there's less than maybe a dozen companies that are in that space, and all working on very different contexts. And so there's really every example that you see from that where somebody says, this kind of thing worked on at TikTok, or this kind of thing worked in a Grab or a Gojek, or this other startup in the region. A lot of those things won't apply, right? Like, they're the principles and insights that you'll get from those, I think, are important as part of the process, but your mileage will vary, and then some of the costliest mistakes we ended up making were where we took we maybe took some of those lessons too much to heart, and then we realized that actually that doesn't fit at all with our personal context, and we had to do things very differently because of this particular market that we're in, and this particular community that we're engaging. So I think it's the when to disagree with the consensus, and with the general, like, dogma and way of doing things. That's the most important part as an entrepreneur. If you're working on something like this, where it's not just a plug and play, like, there is something you need to figure out, a unique positioning,